What's up, good people? How are you guys doing? Hope everything is fine wherever you are. This is Pepe Cuenca from Spain, and I welcome you to the game of the day of round number 4 of the Super Tournament GRENKE Chess Classic. Today, I bring you a fantastic game and a fantastic attacking masterpiece that has been played between Arkadij Naiditsch, 2700 player, and Vincent Keymer, 14 years old kid from Germany, who is already extremely strong. He qualified for this super strong tournament after winning the Open last year. This game is probably one game that every one of us would love to play at least once in our lives, because the attacking ideas are extremely interesting and the finish is just fantastic. So let's fasten our seatbelts and start analyzing what happened in the 64 squares. I have to tell you that this game is very, very complex. So we have to pay a lot of attention, and probably it's more complex than asking for the Wi-Fi password in the morgue, or than shitting in an major tube. So Naiditsch decided to go for e4, and Vincent Keymer replied with c5, the Sicilian, right? So one of the most aggressive openings that you can play with the black pieces. Knight c3 by Naiditsch. You guys know this is the closed Sicilian. The main line goes after knight f3, and then later d4, trying to go. Whoa, I'm moving this board. I shouldn't do that. All right, sorry guys. So knight f3, and then probably white's idea is to go d4, entering in the open Sicilian. Knight c3, close Sicilian. Here there are many alternatives for black. Here you can play e6, knight c6, g6, or a6 as Vincent Keymer does. So black's idea in many cases is to expand his majority on the queen side, and then put this bishop on b7, right? And here Naiditsch decided to go for knight g2 e2. This is a very flexible move, because sometimes you want to trick your opponent with this order, because you're hiding what you want to play in the next move. Maybe d3 or d4, maybe g3, right? But Keymer is happy with the knight off. That's why he goes for d6. So he was expecting Naiditsch to go for d4, c takes d4, knight takes d4, and knight f6, and Keymer is in his knight off. But Naiditsch didn't want to go for this in this game, and then he played a4, and then stopping b5 ideas, and now Keymer goes for knight f6, g3 by Arkadij Naiditsch. So he wants to develop this bishop by a g2, and then short castle, and then probably think about going d3 or d4. So knight c6 was played here by Vincent Keymer. In these types of structures, black can always go for some sort of dragon with g6, right? So bishop g2, bishop g7, short castle, and here d3 or d4. After d4, we reach a line that I have played many times in my life against the dragon. This is a very positional line. You want to go knight d2, e2. You want to go h3, and later bishop g5, bishop e3, and probably knight to d5. But after g3, Keymer decided to go for knight c6, bishop g2, e6. Vincent wants to develop this bishop via e7, and then go for short castling, and then short castles, bishop e7, and here d3, d4, normal moves. But Naiditsch shows what he wants to do in the king side, and then he goes for f4, trusting in Facundo, believing in Facundo, as we all do. So probably now he wants to continue with d3, and his intentions are clear on the king side. He wants to proceed with h3 and g4 later, and then trying to create an attack against black's king. So here short castle by Vincent Keymer, d3, and rook b8. Of course, black has to do something, and probably he's gonna try to create some counterplay on the queen side with the move b5, right? a3, a very nice prophylactic move by Naiditsch. This is very typical in these positions. You're not only covering g4 in order to play bishop e3, but you're also preparing for g4 and then start this attack on the king side. Here, Keymer played another prophylactic move, knight d7, because you guys could think, Pepe, come on, stupid Spanish guy, why not to go b5 straight away? I want to create something on the queen side. Because whenever there is a pawn on e4 and on f4 and a bishop on g2, you have to be extremely careful about your unprotected pieces. And for example, here the move e5 is actually really nice for white. You are not losing a piece, because you are lucky and you still have this knight d5, and then black would lose a pawn. So that's why you gotta prepare this b5, and that's why Vincent Keymer goes for knight d7 in this position, and Naiditsch doesn't think twice about that, and then he goes for g4, trying to expand his majority on the king side. And then here in this position, Keymer wanted to stop this pawn march, and then he went for h6 in the position, because one of White's plans in this position would be g5, h4, and then create, let's say, some h5, g6 idea. So that's why Vincent Keymer stops that by playing h6. So that's why now it's not that easy to proceed with the pawn march on the king side for the white player. Why? Because g5 is hard to play, h4 almost impossible to play, and f5 is a move that you don't really want to play, because e5 is going to be a vacant squares for this beautiful cells. So knight g3 was played by Arkadij Naiditsch. Probably he wants to bring as many pieces as he can to the king side. So knight g3, knight e2, bishop e3, queen d2, and then see what happens, right? So bishop h4 was played by Vincent Keymer. This bishop is actually nice place on h4, stopping all these pawn pushes. And then knight c2, e2, covering this knight on g3. b5 was played by Vincent Keymer. Finally, some contemplate on the queen side, and king h2. This is actually a nice move, and introduces a nice idea related by bringing this knight to g1 and later to f3, where actually you will be forcing to kick this bishop back to e7 later, and then when this bishop is back on e7, moves like h4 and g5 are more possible to be played, right? Alright guys, so b4 was played in this position by Vincent Keymer. So you got two options here to create counterplay. One is to go for b4, the other one is to go b takes a4. Rook takes a4, let's say knight b6, rook a1, and let's say d5. This was another interesting alternative for Vincent Keymer. But alright, he tries to go for b4, and bishop e3, another normal development move by Naiditsch, and a5 by Vincent Keymer. As you guys can see, this bishop on c8 is pretty passive, right? So he wants to bring it to a6, and then maybe try to go for c4, and then finally open the position on the queen side. So queen d2 was played by Naiditsch, bishop a6, which at some point would be threatening to go for c4. So that's why Naiditsch stops that by playing b3. So for now, c4 is going to be almost impossible to play, and queen a7 by Vincent Keymer, connecting the rooks, right? So he has finished development. And here, rook g1 was played by Arkadij Naiditsch. So he's saying, you know what, I want to bring this rook to the g file, and then the other one to the f file, and I hope in the future any of these files will get open, and then I'm going to attack your king like hell, right? So the other interesting idea was to go knight to g1 for the idea that we mentioned already, but at this point with the pawn on b3 there's no possibility of going c3, so that's why the knight on d4 covers f3, and let's say after knight f3, bishop takes f3, and then we didn't manage to kick this bishop from h4. So that's why rook g1 was played. And here rook b to c8 by Vincent Keymer, rook a to f1. And here Vincent Keymer went for a move which is at least risky. He goes for g6 here, which gives more break points for the white player here. I mean, we have to say that if black does nothing, let's say after rook c7 or some stupid move, it's not even easy to proceed with the white pieces here. We mentioned the reasons already. So whenever you go g5 here, after h takes, f takes, the e5 square is gonna get free for one of those knights. And then same problem after f5. e5 is gonna be a stasis square for black player, and also these ideas related by exchanging the dark squares bishops are always interesting for the black player here. So that's why g6, and then the game from here becomes extremely crazy. Naiditsch goes for a pawn sacrifice with the move e5. First sight, it looks like black can just take this pawn on e5, right? But actually, it's not that good. In the game, Keymer closed the position with d5. The problem with e5 is now you can go f5, and now you have removed this e5 square, which was extremely useful for the black player and one of his knights. And now you're attacking h6, and now e4 is vacant for one of white pieces, mainly a knight. Let's say bishop g5, takes on c6, takes knight e4, bishop e3, queen takes, g5, and then takes, and rook f1. And in these lines, this knight is extremely strong, and there you control c5, you control f6, also put pressure on g5, and then there are ideas like bringing this knight to g3 and also pushing the h pawn, and then black is in deep trouble on the king side. So after the move f5, black closes the position with d5, removing this square for the white player, and now Naiditsch goes all in this position. And who believes in Facundo? Naiditsch believes in Facundo, and he goes for f5, and then here the position becomes extremely complicated. I was trying to analyze like for 1 hour this game before showing to you guys, and then I struggle a lot trying to understand every variation here. So the best move by far in this moment for the black player was g5. Keymer didn't go for that. g5 was very good, because now it's not easy to proceed with the white player, for the white player attacking the black skin, right? Because now f6 leads to nothing, and then let's say after knight h5, e5 is actually hanging, and it's actually impossible to protect. So that's why let's say knight h5 takes on e5, bishop f2. This position is still, of course, very unclear, because you got this pawn on h5, on h6 and g5. There are some h4 ideas later, f6 ideas, but still black would be a little bit better. But okay, Keymer decided to take on e5, which looks natural also, but then Naiditsch took on h6, and then white's attacking the rook on f8. So that's why Vincent Keymer moved this rook to e8, looks very natural, and now Naiditsch took this pawn on g6, f takes e6, and then we're asking to ourselves, how should we take on g6 back, with the pawn or with the knight? Well, basically with the pawn is a much better move, because if you take with the knight, then you give white the possibility to jump with this knight to h5, which is an extremely tasty square. There's a nice Latin party on h5 with a lot of salsa, bachata, merengue, and even reggaeton. So f takes e6, f takes g6, and g5 by by Naiditsch. Naiditsch's idea is very simple. He wants to play queen f4 and then trap this bishop. We mean trap. By trap we mean like we are forcing this bishop to take on g3, and that would be extremely nice for the white player. That would mean that white would get the bishop pair. So here Vincent Keymer thinks, all right, I'm gonna go for knight f7. Probably bishop g3 was a little bit better, but knight f7 from the human point of view makes a lot of sense, because you are now putting a lot of pressure on the g5. And then the question is not black winning the g5 pawn? All right, it is, but there could be a lot of trouble on the g file, and from this point the game becomes extremely beautiful and extremely complicated. Let's try to understand everything here. So queen f4 was played by Naiditsch, and now the first question is, can black take the pawn on g5? Let's start with the move bishop takes e5. Well, this is actually not working because of queen takes f7. Boom, queen takes f7, rook takes, king takes, and bishop takes g5. White has two pieces for a rook, and then it's with a clear advantage, because two pieces normally are much better, and with this weak king, and then the dark squares are so weak that white is just much better in this position. So bishop g5 not possible. Let's try to see what happens if black takes with the knight on g5. And this is actually an extremely nice variation, because at first sight white can't take on h4, right? Because after queen takes h4, knight f3, and black wins the queen on the spot. So that's why here queen takes h4 is not the best move, but there was a brilliant move here for Naiditsch in this variation, knight h5. Wow! And then some of you guys at home will be saying, come on, this Spanish guy, this stupid Spanish guy, all the time saying, talking bullshit, talking nonsense. What happens after g takes h5? There's the same problem if you take on h4 now, but there's not the same problem, because now you have opened the g file for the rook, and after knight f3, now bishop takes f3. This is a check, and black doesn't win the game, and actually black has to resign here. So that's why knight g5 was not possible. And here probably the best move again was bishop takes g3. But then after queen takes e3, this position looks extremely ugly for the for black, right? Because this knight is coming to f4, and then you can't actually take on h6 because it's just extremely impossible to protect this pawn on g6. Boom, bishop takes d5 followed by queen d6 and rook f7, or let's say e takes, queen takes, king h8 and rook f7, and black has to resign. All right. Yes, rook f7, exactly, or even knight f4. So here, Keymer decided to take on h4, but after queen h4, the position is already extremely complicated for Keymer, because now you gotta go back to f7. If Keymer goes to f5, then there's this beautiful, boom, rook takes f5. You can never take with the e pawn since there is a killing bishop takes e5 followed by queen h6, checkmate. And then if you take with the g pawn, there's knight f5 and same stuff. If black takes back, then there's bishop takes d5, king g7 and queen h6. Black resigns. So here black went for knight f7 and another beautiful move by Naiditsch. And at first sight, I was not understanding anything. So I was saying, what's the idea behind knight h5? G takes h5, and now after queen takes h5, there's knight d6, and then this queen comes to g7, and looks like it's protecting everything. But Naiditsch's idea was to go rook f6 here in this position, an extremely beautiful move. Like, introduces a lot of attacking ideas. The question is, can I take this rook on f6? Actually, no. If you do nothing, let's say c4, there's knight f4, and there are too many threats in this position. Rook g6, followed by queen h5, knight h5, knight g6. So many nasty threats that black has to resign. So Keymer decided to go and take the rook on f6. G takes f6, and the problem for black now is that white is threatening the queen and checkmate in two moves. Queen g3, king f8, queen g7 checkmate. So that's why the only move is queen d6 here in this position and knight f4. Now again, white's threatening to go queen g3 and queen g7. There's no a good way of stopping that. Keymer tried king g7 here in this position, and Naiditsch went for queen g3, and the finish was fantastic. But there was another even more beautiful finish. Bishop takes d5, e takes d5, boom, rook takes, or rook g8 check, king takes, queen g3, queen f8, queen g7, and there's checkmate, even though white player has sacrificed two rooks and a minor piece. This is why chess is so beautiful. Then we shouldn't forget that Facundo helped for that. So queen g3 was played instead by Naiditsch, threatening checkmate in one move on g7, rook e to d8, giving some square for this king who wants to run like a beast, like Usain Bolt. But then rook e1, and then white is putting a lot of pressure on e6. You can't protect this pawn with rook e8 since there's queen g7 checkmate. Keymer tried e5, but after knight g6, only move king e8, knight e5, and basically Keymer has to resign. He tried queen f6, and then we'll show the finish. But the thing is, if black goes knight e5, rook takes e5, king d7, rook d5, white wins the queen, and then the king is so unsafe that this is almost plus 11 according to Stockfish for the white player. So Vincent tried to go for queen f6, and then here you guys saw the finish. I think so. Knight g4 check. The only way of not blundering the whole queen is queen e7, and here knight f6, king f8, and queen g8. Beautiful game by Naiditsch. He sacrificed, I don't know how many pieces. Yeah, he sacrificed even his shirt, right? He just put it in the table and said, "You want to take that too?" Well, kudos to Keymer as well, who is given a lot of fights in every game, and hopefully he'll get some reward, and hopefully he'll win some game in this tournament. So remember, guys, you can follow all the action in Chess24 tomorrow, round number 5, broadcast in English, broadcast in Spanish. So it's been a pleasure for me to be with all of you here, and tomorrow I'll be back with more. So have a nice evening and be good. If you drink, don't drive. Bye bye. Sayonara, baby.